Hello, and thank you for joining. My name is Matt Elwell with CPA.com, coming to you live from our 2024 Digital CPA Convention. I'm joined today with Charles Groome from Biz2Credit, one of our trusted partners, VP of Growth. Charles, thanks for being here with me today. Really want to give an update and talk more about how financing can impact CPAs and their small to mid-sized businesses. And I think, leading into maybe our next year, 2025, now that we're in December of 2024, what are some of the key financing trends that CPAs should be aware of as we move forward into 2025?
Yeah, well, I think since we last sat down at AICPA Engage back in June, there's been a lot of developments, right? And I think firms who have been staying up to speed on all these developments across many practice areas, but maybe not so much in the financing area and how it impacts lending, access to capital, and things of that nature. So I think there's a couple of big things that we want to call out, right? One is the changeover in administration that we're all looking out for in 2025. That is going to have a big impact, right? In the Trump administration, I think there's two big T words beyond Donald Trump himself: taxes and tariffs. And the question will be for business owners, how are those things going to play out over the course of the next 12 to 18 months? Will we see an extension of TCJA? Will we see tariffs come in at a very punitive level that could impact margins, whether positively or negatively, depending on the industry maybe, or the type of business, or the way that they are set up? So I think those two big trends are going to impact the need for financing. I think there's also a big change that has happened around the availability of financing. The Fed has finally started to cut interest rates down a little bit, and that is starting to flow through to business owners. And it's starting to have an effect, even if it's small at this point, on what kind of capital options are available to businesses.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big story we hear feedback on is, how banks have been hesitant to lend, and is that going to ease up with changing rates? FinTech has been a growing player with, maybe a closer rate than, where firms can get a similar rate for their clients that they can get with a traditional bank, but we're seeing positive lending. And then different products changing, right? So we're seeing lines of credit being harder to achieve for small businesses. Right. So it's going to be interesting how that plays out. And I know a lot of our firms are looking forward to getting some clarity in the new year just to understand what we're working with. And I think, looking at that and knowing that rates have changed a bit, how does Biz2Credit see the demand for financing changing, right? So we know we've seen different cost inputs and, changes because of inflation and other factors. How do we see that demand changing for small businesses next year?
Yeah, so I think really demand is going to go up over the course of the next 6 months reliably as we now have a more certain economic policy going forward. Businesses also, right now, especially with tariffs still unknown, businesses are investing up front. And so the demand for cash flow financing, the demand for structured financing offers is going up as we speak. At the same time, availability of financing for existing businesses has started to unfreeze a little bit, unstick a little bit. There's been an inflow of private credit into the small business space that really took shape over the last 12 months and is now starting to yield out in some of those benefits that you talk about. Lower cost of capital across the credit spectrum, and also availability for some sectors that previously might have been isolated. Hospitality is one of those categories that traditionally has very limited financing options on a day-to-day basis. That's starting to open up more now.
Well, that's terrific, and I think we see feedback from that around specific loans we work with Biz2Credit around different segments that are harder to fund than others. So it's nice to always be kind of aware as a firm and as a CPA practitioner, what are the best places to go for my clients? How do I help them the best ways? And I think as we think about that, how do you think firms can prepare best to be an advisor to their clients? How do they position themselves in the right way to help clients with this service?
I think it really comes in three buckets, and I think some firms will cover all three of these, and some firms may really just focus on the first two. I think the first one is an awareness question. The business owner is in the business every day, and they don't have that broader perspective of having many different businesses to run necessarily. The CPA is engaged across many businesses at once, and they can see trends. They can have an ear out for these macro impacts and then start to translate it into what does it mean for my client? What does it mean in this case for that business? So I think in that way, firms across the board that have a good advisory practice, they need to be proactive about thinking about, all right, what does interest rate mean for my client? I need to give advice on that question. The next big bucket, I think, is really about presentation. Give the client access to options. Make it easy for the client when they have a big project, or maybe they have a refinancing need that would really improve their financials for the year. Think about how do you present options, even if those options are not ready right this second for the business owner. And then the third piece, and this is the piece where I think some firms will say, this is the right fit for my firm and I'll really lean into this area. And other firms may say, maybe it's not the right fit. And that is actually packaging the applications for financing. But there's a huge amount of value that a firm adds when they do lean into that area. It helps the client get access to better rates, helps the client get access to a broader range of products, and it may also just make it so much easier for that client to get the money that they need, that they're no longer struggling when it comes to month close or year close.
Yeah, and I think that's a tangible place we see a huge impact that CPAs can have on their clients, right? Is that decisioning, whether it be around structured financing or the right financing products or when to take financing. And those are key areas where we have insights that our firms or our small to mid-sized businesses that we're working with really are just saying, hey, I need money. Instead of stepping back and looking at the real macro picture of what taking that money means to their business. And I think that's an important distinction that we really need to focus on as practitioners, because we can have a huge impact on cash flow in that regard. As we talk about different areas that firms are going to learn, I always think of CPA Practice Advisor. There's a lot of good content there that not just Biz2Credit and CPA.com, but other banks have provided that tend to trend there. Firms go into Journal of Accountancy looking for content. Where else can firms look to learn more about assisting clients with financing?
I think being really knowledgeable about financing as a subject area in general is good. The SBA website is a great place to go for the latest advice from the government perspective. The FDIC and the Federal Reserve have excellent resources and surveys about businesses overall. As a fintech company that works with so many small businesses, we also publish a lot of data, and we want that to be freely available. We want firms to be using data we publish on the right cities to start a business and where different industries might be performing on their finances. Use that for benchmarking purposes. Give your client that outside-in perspective that they may be lacking, and then tie it into their financial decision making so that they're not calling you in a panic on a Sunday night as they try to decide 3 different loan options, but they're calling you ahead of time and saying, where are the best places for me to look for capital in the first place?
Yeah, and I think that's, looking out in advance is one of those important things that, really clients are looking for. They want their CPA to be proactive in bringing solutions to challenges before they even know they have those challenges, right?
You want them to go to you as their CPA instead of ChatGPT for these questions. And I think being a little bit knowledgeable ahead of time, just in general, on how that macro picture looks and the way that it can be applied to their business is the key.
Yeah, and I think that's a big goal of the relationship we have with Biz2Credit and how we work together. And we're also doing a lot to create content with you, whether it be through LinkedIn Live, through webinars we deliver, or even sessions here at Digital CPA. So really love working with you and your firm and all the content we're able to deliver for our CPA community. If you are not here at Digital CPA with us this year, would absolutely invite you to look at it for 2025. It's a fun convention and a great place to see all things technology in the accounting world. So thank you for joining us. Look forward to chatting with you soon.